Okay, so you've probably been hearing this word woke quite a bit. I mean, it's everywhere,
Yeah,
right? Especially with things like Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and his Stop WOKE Act hitting the news.
definitely. It's really prominent.
And maybe you feel like you've got a solid grasp on it, or maybe, you're still kind of wondering what it really means every time it pops up.
Uh-huh. It can be confusing.
So today we want to try and, well, cut through some of that noise.
Exactly. Our goal here in this deep dive is to trace the actual story of woke. Where did it come from? How did it get to where it is now? This sort of really charged term in public conversations.
Right.
And we've looked at quite a few different sources to piece together this journey.
And it's honestly a fascinating journey. We're going right back, like way back to its origins in Black American culture, and then follow that thread as it got. Well, transformed into the political buzzword we hear today, there's a definite power dynamic involved here that I think you'll find pretty eye-opening.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's start with the most fundamental point, the place it really begins. This idea that, as Elijah Watson from OK Player put it, to be woke is to be black.
Yeah.
And that's not just, a catchy phrase. It really points to how deeply the term is tied to black experiences, black awareness.
It's almost strange how far back this goes. Watson's research, it actually dug up this 1962 New York Times essay by William Melvin Kelly.
That's the one. If you're woke, you dig it.
If you're woke, you dig it. And here's where it gets really interesting. Kelly, writing from Harlem back in '62, was already seeing white people picking up Black American slang.
And twisting it.
And twisting it, yeah, changing the original meanings. Watson even said Kelly was prophetic.
It really feels that way looking back. So a key insight right there early on is this recurring pattern. Language from marginalized groups gets absorbed.
And sometimes diluted or even weaponized by the dominant culture.
Exactly. Kelly specifically mentioned a couple of ways this happens. One was literally giving words the opposite meaning.
Like jive.
Right, jive. It used to mean something good, something authentic maybe, and it shifted to mean something, untrustworthy or deceptive.
Wow, that shows how language can be deliberately flipped.
It does. It reveals this pattern of linguistic appropriation.
And it feels like a pattern we see again and again, doesn't it? Michael Harriot over at the Griot, he really stresses this historical trend in America.
He does.
He argues that whenever Black people create a term to express maybe their fight for liberation or just their reality, it often gets co-opted.
And turned into something negative.
Yeah, turned into an anti-Black insult by white society. And woke seems to fit right into that unfortunate history.
Absolutely. And we actually have documented uses of woke within the Black community, way before it hit the mainstream. It was like an internal signal, meaning you were aware of racial dynamics.
You mean like Marcus Garvey, back in the 1920s?
Precisely. His call to wake up. It was a clear call for Pan-Africanism, for awareness, for engagement.
That's powerful. And then there's Lead Belly's song from 1938, Scottsboro Boys.
Oh.
That line, stay woke, keep your eyes open.
Yeah.
Especially thinking about the Scottsboro Boys case in Alabama. It just hits hard.
It really does. It's a raw warning, isn't it?
Yeah.
About the constant threat of racial injustice. Keep your eyes open.
So it wasn't just some abstract idea. Woke was about lived experience, a direct response to real danger and injustice.
And it wasn't just artists. Michael Harriot's research found this story about a Black mine workers union leader, West Virginia, 1940.
What happened?
They found out they were being paid less than their white co-workers. And the leader reportedly said, "We were asleep, but we will stay woke from now on."
Wow. Right there in the fight for basic equality.
Exactly. Everyday struggles.
It even pops up in theater. Barry Beckham's play from '72, Garvey Lives. There's a character who says something like, "I've been sleeping all my life, and now that Mr. Garvey didn't woke me up, I'm gonna stay woke, and I'm gonna help him wake up other Black folk."
You really get that feeling, don't you, that this term was alive, circulating in Black communities, probably daily conversations.
Especially somewhere like Harlem.
Linked to that whole spirit of the Black Power movement that Kelly was writing about.
So what's really key here is that because woke was so deeply tied to Black awareness, to resistance.
That very connection made it vulnerable.
Vulnerable to being twisted.
Yeah, vulnerable to the kind of negative transformation we're seeing now. Terms that challenge the status quo often face pushback. People try to redefine them.
Like how words like radical or even activist can sometimes be used almost like insults.
Exactly that kind of thing.
It really does feel like we've seen this movie before. Think about Black Power back in the Civil Rights era. It got framed pretty quickly with negative stuff. communism, anti-white feelings.
Which, as Harriet pointed out, ironically led to reactions like white power.
Right. And more recently, look at the 1619 Project. At its heart, it's about re-examining U.S. history, considering slavery's legacy. But it became this huge flashpoint, almost an epithet itself.
Yeah, highly contentious.
Or Black Lives Matter. I mean, a straightforward statement about valuing Black lives. But it got spun by some into being anti-white.
Leading to things like all lives matter or blue lives matter.
The parallels are just really clear.
They are quite striking. And, just like social media, Twitter especially blew up the reach of Black Lives Matter around the world.
It did the same for woke.
It played a massive role in spreading woke way beyond Black communities.
And we should probably mention Erykah Badu's 2008 song, Master Teacher.
Yeah.
That definitely put stay woke back into the modern conversation.
It did. But Watson suggests it was actually her using the phrase on Twitter later, specifically supporting those Russian feminist protesters that really kicked its global spread into high gear.
So that just backs up what Kelly saw decades ago, how fast language evolves.
Right. And social media is like pouring gasoline on that fire. It speeds the whole process up incredibly fast.
Yeah.
Black cultural creations, language, music, art, whatever.
They can get picked up and sort of stripped of their original weight almost overnight once they hit the big digital platforms.
And then you had the mainstream media jumping on it,
Right.
often calling woke just, trendy new slang.
Which kind of trivializes it, right?
Exactly. It further waters down the original deeper meaning and makes it easier for anyone to just pick it up and eventually use it for totally different purposes.
So you see this clear path. A term with deep roots in Black consciousness goes mainstream, starts losing its context.
But the real acceleration towards the negative meaning, that seems to have ramped up after the summer of 2020, the racial justice reckoning.
Ah, okay.
That whole period, it brought a lot more awareness about systemic racism, sure, but it also sparked a huge backlash.
And that's where woke as an insult really took off.
That seems to be when its use as a pejorative really gained momentum.
Right. You started seeing politically motivated people and what our source calls bad actors really weaponizing the term.
Using it deliberately to stir up fear and, frankly, to block actual progress on racial justice issues.
Michael Harriot also made a really important point about who holds the power in mainstream newsrooms.
That's crucial.
He argues that when the people framing the news, shaping how we understand language in the world, are mostly from one background, well, it makes it way easier for a term like woke to be defined and understood outside its original context.
Yeah, the framing becomes skewed.
And maybe even people with good intentions, progressives, might have played a part in this shift without meaning to.
Well, Watson suggests that perhaps the sort of casual adoption of the woke label by some progressives might have missed the full depth of its meaning.
Like wearing it as a badge without doing the work?
Kind of. He emphasizes that real wokeness, in its original sense, isn't just about saying you're progressive, it's about the active work. Trying to build a better, more just world.
Okay, so given all that history, when someone today says we need to stop woke, what are they actually saying?
Well, based on our sources, it seems woke has basically become this vague, derogatory stand-in for a whole bunch of concepts.
Like what?
Like diversity, inclusion, empathy, sometimes even just blackness itself. It's used as a kind of dismissive shorthand.
Not in a good way.
Definitely not in a positive way.
Which brings us back to laws like Florida's Stop WOKE Act. When you know the real history of the word and how it's being used now, these laws feel, well, much more disturbing.
Very much so. Janai S. Nelson from the Legal Defense Fund, she was very direct. She called the Florida law a nefarious attack on truth, history, and public education.
Strong words.
Yeah, and she said it was masked by this fatuous acronym mocking a Black colloquialism. Her argument is that it actively keeps important knowledge from future generations and violates free speech.
And we should remember, this law wasn't popular with everyone in Florida. There were reports, right, of residents, students testifying against it.
That's right. They spoke out about the harm it could do, especially to initiatives that started after the killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery.
So what does it actually do? What are the practical effects?
Well, the reports mention restrictions on teaching certain historical events and figures. One source even talked about alleged limits on even discussing Martin Luther King Jr. in K-12 classrooms in Florida.
Seriously? MLK.
That was reported. It certainly raises big questions about the kind of history kids are being allowed to learn.
It seems unbelievable. Michael Harriot suggests this whole attack on woke is actually a tactic.
How so?
He thinks by making woke toxic, they can effectively demonize the whole idea of caring about marginalized groups and their histories.
Ah, so it makes it easier to roll back progress.
Exactly, without having to explicitly say we don't care about these people or these issues.
That's a chilling perspective. Watson seems to agree, framing the fight against woke and things like critical race theory as basically an attempt to erase history.
Erase the knowledge we need to improve society.
Right. He connects it to what he calls white fragility and says it's the absolute opposite of what woke originally stood for, which was awareness of injustice and a call to fix it.
So wrapping up this deep dive, it's quite a story. We've seen woke start as this really important term within Black American culture.
A call to be alert, to be aware of systemic injustice.
Then it gets picked up, co-opted, and weaponized, really, twisted by political agendas.
And turned into this negative label often used to just shut down conversations about equality and justice.
It's a powerful reminder, isn't it, about how language works and how manipulating words can hide important truths and block progress.
It absolutely is. It really highlights why we need to be critical about the language we use and hear around us.
And maybe it leaves you thinking, how many other words connected to social justice or identity are maybe going through a similar process right now, being subtly shifted or distorted?
That's a really important question to keep in mind. It's definitely worth staying, well, aware of the origins and the shifts in meaning.
And really thinking critically about how these terms are used out there in the world.
Definitely something to keep an eye on.